So I had a question today about how to stay sane with the world as it seems to be right now, completely insane and scary, and like things just seem to be getting worse. And the question was, how can I go on? Everything just seems to be getting darker and darker. It's like I don't want to be here anymore. There's no way out. Every day, everything I see suggests that we're just on a one. There's only one course, and it's towards destruction. And people, losing their minds, and are just really unhappy, and like becoming more and more stressed, fearful, depressed. And the most important thing I want to say today is to understand that we're already in World War III. It's here now. It's not something that's off in the near future. It's here now, and it is a war. It is warfare on the mind, against the mind of every human being, and it is being waged at many different levels. So that's the first really important thing to understand. It's like, it's not really that much of a war that's happening in the physical world. It's a war that's happening at the mind level primarily. It's a war for your mind, and it's a war that they want to win by keeping your mind in fear and separation and being constantly distracted by the next terrible thing that's going on, right? That's the intent. So, and there's I think when we look at technology and we look at social media in general, those areas are where they're the main tools, right? To keep us distracted, to keep us polarized, and to keep us fighting each other, and that's really what social media does, right? It's like the algorithm will give you more and more of whatever you are drawn towards and spend time watching, and so that you'll see more and more of it. So it increases that polarization of that particular way of seeing things or understanding the world. And so and then you'll be in your own little echo chamber, and then when you see something that really triggers you, you'll then have a really strong opinion and view based on everything that you're being bombarded with. And when that is in opposition to another point of view that somebody else has, before you know it, because they're in their own echo chamber, before you know it, you're in the midst of a fight with them, right? And that's what, if you think about the universe as being all different levels of energy and frequency, right? That's what it all comes down to. Everything in this universe that seems to be so physical and so real, it's just frequency. So, and you have beings, entities, some physical, some not, and we're all vying in one way or another for energy. And then once you understand that gives you more power, because you're like, okay, well, what level of frequency do I want to be operating at? What energy do I want to be exchanging? Because everything is an exchange of energy. So once you understand that, you're like, okay, so there is a war that's being waged on my mind and the mind of every other human being. How do I not be so affected by it? How do I rise up? How do I become more empowered, more comfortable with myself? And that is really the question to ask yourself, because it's going to take you on a journey of reworking and reorganizing your mind, and there will be many different kind of gates that you go through, and you'll get to a point where you're like, actually, I do have power in this war that is being waged. And you will get to a point where you start to realize that your power, at these levels is immense, and you can do so much to raise your frequency and to feel better about yourself, feel better about life, and hold yourself in a higher frequency, a more loving energy. Therefore, that's going to dictate a better experience of your life, right? You're going to feel better about yourself day by day. You're going to feel more alive, more empowered. So that is the war to win, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't, we still have to take care of ourselves physically, and we still have to you know, take care, and we have to be mindful of things and not get involved in, you know, things that are going to drag us down energetically, right? There are so many different ways these lower vibration kind of entities, beings, whatever you want to call them, physical or not, you know, a lot of it non-physical, a lot of it comes out of the astral plane. You know, we're in the third density, the astral is the fourth density, and you know, they're feeding off of everyone. You know, the lower the frequency you are, the more depressed, sad, unhappy, miserable you are, the more they're able to feed off you. That's how they keep going. So the more you raise your frequency and the more you're coming from a place of love for yourself and for others, and empowerment and purpose in life, you know, you're no longer a good meal for them, you know, and you actually start to, as you lift your frequency up, you start to, you know, you're then giving them the opportunity to raise their frequency. And obviously most of the time they're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to stay where they are because they're operating from a place of fear and, you know, consumption of energies that are of a similar vibration. So once you're there, it's like, okay, now I can start to have power. And then you do get to a point where you can start having fun with it. And I think really that's where everything changes, because it becomes about living a life that you want to live and having fun with life and exploring more and feeling more empowered, right? So it's like a kid kind of being playful, you know, which is really what God intended for us, right? Before we got dragged down into these lower frequencies a long time ago, this is how we were intended to be, you know. Being in a body was supposed to be a joyful, you know, just beautiful thing, and we are headed back to that, you know. But we've set up this game for ourselves that's very, you know, difficult to get out of, and it takes work. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because I know there's a lot of people in this kind of place where they're like, I can't stand this anymore, you know, this is unbearable. And the most important thing I've said there is about warfare. You know, warfare. You're on the battlefield with these others that I've mentioned, you know, and if you start shifting your mind in this way, you're going to rise above the battlefield. You know, you don't have to. You can see it. You can still step into it if you need to. You know, but you don't have to live there. It becomes a choice. And the more empowered you become, and the more aware you become of the tools that you've got. You know, you've got vast munitions. You know, you've got vast tools and instruments at your disposal that are, you know, really of the gods. And this is the last thing that they want you to access, because once you start getting there, you know, you're really operating at this kind of, in this warrior energy, you know, and that's the last thing they want. Because once you're in the warrior energy, you know, and your heart is open and you're coming from a place of love, you know, you are so powerful in this world, and you're able to do so much good, and you're able to have such a positive impact on people, you know, and it lifts you up and it lifts others up. And when you really start to align with your true purpose in life, you know, and you're in that flow of giving what you're supposed to be giving at your highest potential into this world, that is when you're at your most, you know, optimal, where you can really make a difference. So yeah, understand that while this seeming warfare is going on, and you know, hold that with you as you go forward, especially for those that are watching this who are, you know, really feeling at the effect and stuck in the, you know, struggling with the pain and the agony of what seems to be going on. It's warfare, you know, and you're going to reach a point where you're the warrior winning the war, you know. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah, okay, that's it.